Rush Pages.
Learn English through podcast.
James, have you ever been in a car with someone driving for a long time and nobody says anything for like 20 minutes? And it's not awkward at all. It's actually kind of nice.
Oh, I love that kind of silence. The comfortable kind, where you don't feel this pressure to fill every single second with words.
Right. But then there's the other kind of silence. Like when you ask a question in a meeting and nobody answers for what feels like an eternity.
That silence is a completely different animal. That silence has weight. You can feel everyone in the room quietly praying someone else speaks first.
The prayer of please not me, please not me.
Exactly, same word. Silence. Two completely different feelings.
And today, we're talking about that. Silence. Why we're so afraid of it sometimes. Why it's actually really powerful when we allow it. And how learning to sit with silence can genuinely change how you communicate.
Hey, English learners. Welcome back to the Rush Pages podcast, your cozy place to learn real English through real everyday conversations. I'm James.
And I'm Emma. And today's episode is for anyone who has ever felt uncomfortable with silence. In a conversation, in a meeting, in their own head even.
We're talking about why silence feels so uncomfortable, why it's actually one of the most powerful tools in communication, and how to become more comfortable with it in English and in life.
Real vocabulary, real reflection, and a really interesting topic today.
Let's begin.
James, let's start with the obvious question. Why does silence make so many people uncomfortable? Because logically, silence is just nothing happening. It shouldn't feel like anything at all.
Logically, yes, but emotionally, silence often feels loaded. Loaded, carrying extra meaning or tension beyond what's actually there.
Loaded silence. That's such a good way to describe it. It's not just empty air. It feels like it's carrying something.
And I think part of the reason is we interpret silence as a signal. When someone goes quiet, our brain starts trying to figure out what it means. Are they upset? Bored? Judging me?
Interpret. To try to understand the meaning of something. And silence gives us almost no information. So our brain fills in the blank with whatever fear feels most likely.
Fills in the blank. Completes missing information, usually by guessing or assuming. And unfortunately, the guesses our anxious mind makes are rarely positive ones.
Right. Nobody's brain says the silence probably means they're deeply comfortable and happy. It usually jumps to something's wrong.
Straight to the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, the most negative possible outcome you can imagine, even if it's unlikely.
The second reason silence feels uncomfortable, especially in conversation, is that we've been socially trained to see it as a gap that needs filling.
Socially trained, taught through culture and habit to behave a certain way in social situations. From a young age, we learn that conversation should flow continuously, and silence means something has gone wrong.
So, the moment there's a pause, people rush to fill it with small talk, with a joke, with literally anything, just to make the discomfort go away.
Rush to fill it. Quickly try to end the silence by saying something, often without really thinking first.
And the third reason? Silence can feel vulnerable. Vulnerable, exposed, open to being seen clearly without distraction.
Because when nobody's talking, there's nothing to hide behind. You're just present. And presence without words to soften it can feel exposed.
Exposed. visible, without protection or cover. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? That words can actually be a kind of shield.
A shield, something that protects you, blocks something from reaching you. And a lot of people use constant talking as a shield against feeling too exposed, too seen.
Which makes so much sense. If you're always talking, you never have to sit with the discomfort of just being.
Just being. Such a simple phrase and such a difficult thing for a lot of people to actually do.
Let's talk about the different types of silence, because I don't think all silence is the same. Some silence feels wonderful, some feels terrible.
Completely agree. Let's start with comfortable silence. This is the silence between people who trust each other deeply, where nothing needs to be said because the connection is already there.
Comfortable silence, silence that feels natural, relaxed, without pressure or tension. Like sitting quietly with an old friend or that long car ride you mentioned earlier.
And I think comfortable silence is actually a sign of a really strong relationship. If you can sit quietly with someone and feel completely at ease, that says a lot.
At ease, relaxed, comfortable, without anxiety. Because with a stranger or someone you don't know well, silence often feels tense. But with someone you deeply trust, it just feels peaceful.
The second type, awkward silence. This is the uncomfortable kind, usually happening between people who don't know each other well or in a situation with unspoken tension.
Unspoken tension, stress, or discomfort that exists but hasn't been directly talked about. Like when there's clearly something wrong, but nobody's addressing it out loud.
Addressing, talking about directly, dealing with openly. And awkward silence often builds because everyone's waiting for someone else to break it first.
Break it. End the silence by speaking. There's actually an interesting social dynamic here. Everyone feels the discomfort, but nobody wants to be the one who admits it by speaking too eagerly.
The third type, reflective silence. This is a really valuable kind of silence, often happening after someone shares something meaningful or after a deep question.
Reflective, thoughtful, allowing time to think carefully before responding. This is the silence that happens when someone asks a genuinely thoughtful question. And instead of answering instantly, you actually pause to think.
And this kind of silence is often misunderstood as awkward, when really it's a sign of genuine consideration. Consideration, careful thought given to something before acting or speaking.
I think this is such an important distinction because a lot of people rush to fill reflective silence, and in doing so, they actually interrupt something valuable.
Interrupt, to stop or break the flow of something before it's finished. When you jump in too quickly during someone's reflective silence, you can actually cut off their genuine thought process.
The fourth type, powerful silence. This is silence used intentionally as a communication tool, a pause before an important point, a moment of quiet that lets something meaningful sink in.
Sink in. To be fully absorbed and understood, to really register in someone's mind. Great speakers, great communicators, they understand that silence used well can actually be more powerful than words.
A well-placed pause draws attention. It creates space for the listener to actually process what was just said, instead of rushing straight to the next sentence.
Well placed, positioned or timed effectively at exactly the right moment. And I think that's the real shift in understanding silence, realizing it's not always something to avoid. Sometimes it's something to use.
Let's dig into this a bit more. How silence, used well, can actually improve how we communicate. because I think it's counterintuitive for a lot of people to think of silence as helpful rather than just an absence of communication.
Counterintuitive and going against what you'd naturally expect. Right. Most people think good communication means talking clearly and confidently, and that's true. But it's incomplete without silence woven in.
Woven in, included, and integrated as a natural part of something. Let's talk about listening first, because I think silence is actually the foundation of real listening.
Completely. If you're mentally preparing your response while someone else is still talking, you're not really listening. You're just waiting for your turn.
Waiting for your turn. A really common habit in conversation where you're focused on what you'll say next rather than genuinely absorbing what the other person is saying right now.
And true listening requires a kind of internal silence, too. Quieting your own thoughts long enough to actually take in what someone else is expressing.
Internal silence. Quiet within your own mind, not just the absence of spoken words. And that internal quiet is honestly rare. Most people's minds are constantly busy, even while someone else is speaking.
The second way, silence improves communication. It gives space for the other person to elaborate. Elaborate to explain or share more detail about something.
If you ask a question and immediately fill any pause with another question or with your own thoughts, the other person often gives you a shorter, less thoughtful answer.
But if you ask a question and then simply wait, comfortably, patiently, people often continue talking, sharing more than they originally planned to.
Because silence creates a kind of gentle invitation, an invitation to fill that space with something real, rather than a quick, surface level answer.
Gentle invitation. A soft, non-pushy way of encouraging someone to open up or continue. I think this is such a valuable skill, especially in deeper conversations.
The third way, silence helps. It prevents rushed, poorly considered responses. When you allow a pause before responding, even just a few seconds, your answer tends to be more thoughtful, more accurate.
Rushed, done too quickly without enough care or thought. A rushed response often says the first thing that comes to mind, rather than the thing that's actually true or helpful.
Whereas a pause, even a brief one, gives your brain time to actually consider the question properly, rather than reacting automatically.
Reacting automatically, responding instinctively without conscious thought, almost like a reflex. And in important conversations, automatic reactions aren't always our best, most considered responses.
The fourth way, silence communicates confidence. Someone who's comfortable with a pause, who doesn't rush to fill every gap, often comes across as more composed, more self assured.
Composed, calm, in control of your emotions, not flustered. Whereas someone who talks quickly and constantly to avoid any silence can actually seem more nervous, even if their words are perfectly fine.
Self assured, confident in yourself and your own judgment. And this really surprised me when I first learned about it. How much a simple pause can change how confident and credible you appear.
Credible, believable, trustworthy, taken seriously. There's real power in that pause before you speak. It signals, I'm thinking carefully, not just reacting.
Let's get practical now, James. How does someone actually get more comfortable with silence, especially if it's always felt uncomfortable to them?
I think the first step is noticing your urge to fill silence without immediately acting on it. Urge, a strong, sudden desire to do something.
Just noticing, oh, I feel the need to say something right now. And then pausing, even briefly, before deciding whether that thing actually needs to be said.
That small gap between the urge and the action, that's where real change starts happening. Creating even a tiny bit of space between impulse and behavior,
Impulse, a sudden urge or desire to act, often without thinking it through. And that small pause allows you to choose your response rather than just reacting automatically out of discomfort.
the second step, practicing silence in low stakes situations first. Low stakes. Situations where the outcome doesn't matter very much, so mistakes or discomfort feel less risky.
So instead of practicing silence during an important job interview, practice it during a casual conversation with a friend. Let a natural pause happen. See how it actually feels without pressure.
You'll probably notice the world doesn't end. Nobody thinks less of you. The silence passes and the conversation usually continues just fine.
Which builds confidence for using silence in higher pressure situations later on.
The third step, reframing silence as thoughtfulness rather than awkwardness. Because how you interpret your own silence really affects how comfortable you feel with it.
Reframing, changing how you think about or interpret something. If you tell yourself, this silence means I'm thinking carefully, instead of this silence means something's wrong, the whole experience shifts.
It really does. Same silence. Completely different internal experience depending on the story you tell yourself about it.
The fourth step, extending your tolerance gradually. Tolerance, your ability to endure or handle something without becoming distressed.
Start with a 2-second pause before responding. Then gradually, over time, extend it a little longer. Building comfort slowly, rather than forcing something that feels too uncomfortable too quickly.
Gradually, slowly, step by step, over time. Just like building any new skill, comfort with silence develops through gentle, repeated practice, not through one dramatic attempt.
And honestly, once you start practicing this, you begin to notice silence differently everywhere. In conversations, in meetings, even in your own thoughts.
You start to see it not as an empty gap to be afraid of, but as genuinely useful space. Space that allows for listening, for thinking, for real connection.
Real connection. That's really what this whole episode comes down to, isn't it?
It really is. Let's go through today's vocabulary. James,
Let's go. First, loaded.
loaded, in this context, means carrying extra meaning or tension beyond what's obviously there. For example, that silence felt loaded, like something unspoken was happening. Repeat, loaded.
Loaded. Next, to interpret.
To interpret means to try to understand the meaning of something. For example, we often interpret silence in a negative way, even when there's no real reason to. Repeat, to interpret.
To interpret. Next, vulnerable.
Vulnerable means exposed, open to being seen clearly without protection. For example, silence can feel vulnerable because there's nothing to hide behind. Repeat, vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Next, reflective.
Reflective means thoughtful, allowing time to think carefully before responding. For example, a reflective pause often leads to a more genuine, considered answer. Repeat, reflective.
Reflective. Next, and to sink in.
To sink in means to be fully absorbed and understood, to really register in someone's mind. For example, a pause after important news gives it time to sink in. Repeat, to sink in.
To sink in. Next, counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive means going against what you'd naturally expect. For example, it feels counterintuitive, but silence can actually improve communication. Repeat. Counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive. Next, to elaborate.
To elaborate means to explain or share more detail about something. For example, waiting patiently after a question often encourages someone to elaborate. Repeat. To elaborate.
To elaborate. Next, composed.
Composed means calm and in control of your emotions, not flustered. For example, someone comfortable with silence often appears more composed. Repeat, I composed.
Composed. Next, an urge.
An urge is a strong, sudden desire to do something. For example, noticing your urge to fill silence is the first step to becoming more comfortable with it. Repeat. An urge.
An urge. And finally, to reframe.
To reframe means to change how you think about or interpret something. For example, reframing silence as thoughtfulness rather than awkwardness genuinely changes how it feels. Repeat. To reframe.
To reframe. 10 words today. All connected to a topic that's more powerful than it might first appear.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. James, I think this one is going to make me notice silence very differently now.
Same here, honestly. I think I'll actually try letting a pause exist next time instead of rushing to fill it.
A very fitting challenge for both of us. And I think the real message today is silence isn't empty. It's actually full of possibility for thinking, for listening, for real connection.
Full of possibility. I love that way of putting it.
If today's episode helped you, please like the video, subscribe to Rush Pages, and leave us a comment.
And today's comment question: do you find silence comfortable or uncomfortable? And has that ever changed in a particular relationship or situation? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Even if you take a moment of silence before answering.
Especially then.
This is Emma,
And this is James.
and you have been listening to the Rush Pages podcast. Sit with a little silence today. See you in the next one.